I started to get older, about 8, 9 years old. I kind of knew what I wanted to do. Like I only did jiu-jitsu. I never was like, I want to go to college. I want to go to, do this or do that. It's just always been fighting.
When I was 8 or 9, I was like eating bugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've only done 3 MMA fights, the Muay Thai fights, and just being there watching other people, even though, I'm not the one fighting me. If I'm watching Cody or Damien, I'm still there and kind of, all right, thinking in my brain, all right, I'm going to be here in a year, 2 years, whatever it is, That I'm just already starting to prepare myself versus the moment's happening. I'm like, oh, this is catching me off guard,
Talk about that principle, man. You said 30 good days, 30 bad days. That's like a framework, man.
I think 30 good days, 30 okay days where maybe let's say I go do a training session, I'm doing some things well, some things, okay, and 30 days where it's like they're rough, they're harder to get through, stuff isn't clicking as well. Anytime I'm in a training, or even when I, if I go and fight and I win, regardless of how I win or how the fight goes, like I'm never gonna get too high on it because there's the next one, or if it doesn't go as well, I'm not gonna get too low because it's the next one.
And how you teach them, if you were a coach, to be a fucking high level striker like you. I love doing these podcasts because I love talking to outliers, and you seem to be one of them. You were just telling me that you started martial arts when you were 3 fucking years old. That's crazy, dude. Yeah. And I know that in the quote unquote MMA martial arts world, people are starting younger, and that's how they end up all crazy at your age, like what you're doing. So can you tell me a little bit on how you got started with martial arts? Obviously, your parents had something to do with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I believe when I was maybe 2 or 3 weeks old, I was living in New York. My parents had took me to like one of Mike Tyson's gym, and I was already in the gym at like 2 weeks old. It was like super hot in there. I was like, it was a very crazy experience. Obviously, I don't really remember what happened, but my parents already kind of bring me around that kind of stuff. And my dad's always been a really big fight fan. Been watching boxing for 20 plus years. And then we moved to Austin. About 2 weeks within, there was a jiu-jitsu gym, literally 2 minutes away, walking distance. So I started training there. Obviously at 3, there's only so much you can do, but just getting my body kind of moving, getting used to like those different type of movements that you don't really get doing anything else. I've always been in martial arts. There's nothing, I haven't done anything else. Like I never went to public school. I never played other sports. I like watching other sports, but I never got to play them or do stuff like that.
So you never went to public school?
Never.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. What was the like a little bit of background on that? Is it just because your parents didn't think it was right for you, or it was just kind of like, let's just stick them in martial arts? Like, what was the kind of thought on that when you look back on it now?
My mom said that she was gonna put me in school. There's a lot of schools right by my house, but she just said maybe we'll take a year, and then she enjoyed just doing homeschool with me, and she thought it was going well, so we just kept doing it. And as time went on, she's like, it's better for me to stay at the house. I was learning a lot of different things. I was still getting social activities. Like every Friday, we'd have people kind of take me, like a person would come and pick me on Fridays. I'm gonna go do stuff like very social, go hang out with different people, go visit like downtown Austin or do stuff like that. Even at a young age, it's still like I'm getting in the house, getting to meet new people, stuff like that. So that was super helpful. And then, I started to get older, about 8, 9 years old. Even though that's not super old, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. Like I only did jiu-jitsu.
That's so crazy.
I just kind of, it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I never was like, I want to go to college. I want to go to, do this or do that. It's just always been fighting.
Well, you saying that you knew what you wanted to do at 8 or 9. When I was 8 or 9, I was like eating bugs. You know what I mean? I was like, wait, come on. That's why I say it's so crazy.
Right.
Because, and particularly why I wanted to talk to you, because the self-awareness is just, off the charts.
Yeah.
Because you have to be self-aware first in order to do an action, right?
Right.
And at 8 or 9 years old, I mean, it just worked out for you. So your dad, going back to it, your dad was a big boxing fan. That's why he got you into martial arts? Mm-hmm. Is that what it was?
I think a big part of it. Yeah. I think he just, I could have played sports, but it's always good to be able to defend yourself and be able to fight.
Yeah, for sure. So
just getting me involved in that. He's like I said, he's been watching sports and boxing for a super long time. So just kind of already getting me into that was huge.
He was like, fuck karate.
Yeah. Gotta do that real stuff.
Yeah. He was like, some of that stuff. So yeah, man, I was looking at a lot of your Instagram stuff, dude. It looked like you were like 13 or something. You had like 5 belts wrapped around you or something like that, man. So you were really doing it at an early age. How did you feel? Were you scared at first when you started competing? Were you kind of intimidated, or were you just like, man, let's do this, man? You've always had that fire.
When I started in jiu-jitsu, I've done like countless jiu-jitsu tournaments, which is great. But I think fighting Muay Thai, I always wanted to fight Muay Thai or fight something with striking. Because jiu-jitsu is like you can still get that same adrenaline, but it is very different from Muay Thai or MMA. Like out of the 3 that I've done between jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai and MMA, adrenaline or the way you feel before each is different. With MMA, it's like you have 4-ounce gloves, which is a very different feel. Muay Thai, it's like slightly bigger gloves. I'm wearing shin guards, headgear, elbow pads, and then jiu-jitsu, it's like no striking involved.
Right.
So when I first started competing jiu-jitsu, I don't think I got super nervous. I think it was just like, getting intense, getting used to that feeling. I try not to get super nervous. Obviously, like, I can only control it so well, that I can't just, be perfect or control those kind of feelings or emotions. But I think lately, especially with how much I've been competing or the people I'm around, I'm starting to kind of develop a pretty good mindset for fighting and kind of get into that state of when I'm about to fight and not trying to make it too different from sparring compared to actually fighting. Obviously, it is very different because, in sparring, you could be touch sparring or someone could be trying to take your head off. But when you go to fight, there's someone trying to take your head off and they're trying to kill you.
Right.
There's, all eyes are on you. There's big lights. Everyone's just watching you. What's going on? It's kind of, winner losing there versus training. If I get hit, whatever. Or if I get submitted, it's whatever. But in there, it's the real deal.
What kind of thought processes at your age, especially back then when you started competing? Because at such a young age, the sense of awareness is just crazy to me. Because do you just go into like the fight at that young age and just be like, all right, like, okay, let's do it? Or how do you regulate those emotions before you get into that big spotlight that you were saying?
I think what really helps is when I start to walk out for my fight. And like when I see all my friends and family there, who knows who it would be if they weren't there. But I think when I start to walk out and I look to my right or left and all my friends and family, they're all yelling, cheering, it gets crazy. Because right before the fight, it's kind of like what I feel is like, I get to the venue, start to warm up, I feel good. And then it's like you're one fight away. Like usually when they say like you're on deck, I think that's when the nerves start to really kick in. Because it's like, all right, one fight and then you're walking out,
Yeah.
And that's when the nerves I feel like get the highest. And then once I walk out, I think the nerves start to go away, because then it's that sparring feel for me where it's just me and another person. I just focus on my opponent and it's like, that's all I need to think about. Where I look, all my friends and family right there, they're getting me hyped up, they're yelling, they're cheering. It's like, I just feel comfortable, because that's what I'm used to doing every day is, I'm training with my friends and I'm hanging out with them. We're all talking, when I see them there supporting me, hyping me up, it's like, I feel like untouchable when I'm in there.
Yeah, it's like a home crowd advantage, right?
Exactly.
It's almost like, that's why they have those in sports, right? It's like it hypes
It's a big
you up.
deal. Yeah,
it's a big deal, man. Like,
Yeah.
and even I was talking to Vince, and he was saying like the walkout song, even, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it gets you hyped up, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you're literally like WWE style in front of everyone, like putting on a show.
Seriously.
You're a
Yeah.
showmanship. That's
Right.
what you're a showman. That's what you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I wanted to ask you, man, like, so training with. It's crazy. Like when I was looking over like your profile and stuff, being an Instagram stalker, I was looking at like the people that you train with. Damn.
Yeah.
Like how did you just run into that, or did you guys research like what gyms to go to, or did you just run into like ambush Muay Thai? Like how did you come about going to those gyms?
So I first started training at Gracie Baja in Cedar Park. That's kind of like where I live. I was there for 6 years. Then I moved on to Fight Factory. They have really a lot of great people there. The Tackett brothers, Rodrigo Cabral. Cody was there for a long time. So that's where I met Cody. So basically I met Cody. I didn't do any Muay Thai for the first year of training Jiu-Jitsu there. And then I started training Muay Thai a year later. Cody wasn't doing MMA yet.
Yep.
But over time, after training Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, Cody started doing MMA. So I think he only started doing MMA since, I want to say, the end of 2020.
That's crazy.
So
he was
pretty short
that.
time, not that long. But after he started getting into MMA, we started drilling more and more. And then that's when I started training at Ambush. So Ambush used to be at Fight Factory, where I do Muay Thai now, but they split off. So I go to Ambush for my striking, all that kind of good stuff. Fight Factory for Jiu-Jitsu and B Team as well.
Yeah.
And it was like, I kind of ran in and started going to B Team, but because of Damian Anderson, his MMA fighter. He was fighting at Fury for a while, and I was fighting at CFFC, I believe in Jersey. But I kind of ran into him, and we got a good relationship now. So it's mainly Ambush, B Team, and Fight Factory. And then when I come out here, I come to Syndicate. But about 2 years ago, me and Cody did a trip out here, and we're good friends with Lance. And we just started coming out here and just, built like a really good bond with everybody. And I really like the training out here. I feel like everyone's, super, super good. I love the coaches and the training. And ever since then, it's like, I got my home in Austin, and I come out here, and I got all my friends out here. So I just love coming out here and stuff like that.
Yeah. What to you, since you are, would you say, I mean, it's safe to say that like your specialization, quote unquote, is like striking, right? Mm-hmm. Like you love you like to strike, you like to bang. What makes, so being in Ambush Muay Thai, what makes a good striking gym, would you say? Because now we have thousands of them, right? Because of the rise of like MMA boxing and all that. What is it to you that like separates the gym that you go to from everything else?
I think especially in Austin, like just the coach I have, Elton Wells, what he does differently, I think is very good. You know, he looks at striking a lot differently than most people.
How so?
It just, you know, a lot of times people look at it as just, you know, combinations, or it just, you know, you can train really hard and that's great. And you definitely need to have that, but you need to have the technical side too, you know, the concepts of fighting. And I think a lot of people, if they did some of the stuff that kind of he talks about a little bit differently, not saying that it's perfect, but a lot of stuff that he does and the way he guides me, especially me and Damien, that really helps. You know, it's like, I think he puts us on a good map where, like, if we follow kind of what he says, it's like, it's a very safe way to fight. And there's like a lot of ways how we kind of mitigate risk. You know, big thing we talk about is like mitigating risk. Obviously, you want to be entertaining. You know, if you watch my last fight, it's like there's entertaining moments in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wasn't as good a performance as I know that I can do.
Are you talking about your first pro fight that just happened?
Yeah, the first one that just happened.
I mean, that looked like a mixed martial arts fucking. Like,
for you know, you guys watching or whatever, it's like it's very high. You know, it's hyped up and everyone loves it. But for me personally, like knowing that what I can do, it's a good performance. But I know I can do a lot better.
Yeah. So you were kind of like we are our harshest critics, so I understand, right?
Yeah.
Like, but damn, I mean, let's segue into that, because I was watching it and I was like, this is like a full on like a spectacle of just mixed martial arts. It wasn't just striking, but it was a good showing, right? And like you said, I was actually watching one of your interviews on another podcast, and you were saying that it's good that you got to the unanimous and got all three of them for the experience, right?
Yeah.
For the repetitions and the time. I think that was really, really smart. Sure. Like kind of Cody, what Cody was saying, like you want the highlight, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But like, since you're going to have, like, I'm sure a prolonged career, you're going to need that experience.
For sure. I think it's good I did got 3 rounds, 15 minutes in there. I just know that I can do better, you know. And also, you look on paper, it was a 30-27, I won all 3 rounds, and I didn't really, I got hit maybe 1 or 2 times clean in the face, and I didn't really get hit with anything else, and dominated most of the fight. It's just I know, I fought that guy again, I could finish him, or maybe adjustments, and sometimes fights aren't perfect, you go in there and you think, might have a good camp, might have a bad camp, fight night, you feel good, you don't feel good, we can only control so much, and I feel like on that, you just had to make it work, I thought I was going to go in there and finish him in the first 30 seconds to a minute, didn't happen, I had to adjust, And I think that was a fault on my part by thinking that, just kind of going in the mindset that I'm going to finish him a little quick, and when it doesn't happen, it kind of shocks you a little bit, so that matters too.
What do you think you did wrong at that fight? Since you said that, like, maybe I could have done this, what is it particular about that fight that you were like, maybe I should have went more aggressive? Was it like your positioning? Like, what was it about?
I definitely should have took my time, and like if you watch, me spar, watch the sparring videos I post, like you see like all this kind of, a lot of feints, a lot of this footwork, it looks all this like fancy stuff. And in that fight, not that the fancy stuff doesn't matter. It's more about just the way I was kind of approaching things and the way I was engaging with him. I could have just done that a little bit better. I was just trying to take his head off too soon, and that kind of like just changed my game plan. In the beginning, I kind of want to go in there and just slowly start to ramp the pace up, kind of find my timing, find the distance, and I just was going there to take his head off a little too soon. Which maybe if I connected with one of those overhands, that could have slept him, but I was just kind of rushing it when I didn't need to. If a lot of times when I spar, like I take a minute, 2 minutes to kind of understand, kind of figure, feel them out. You spar, you get it. But I just didn't do that as good as I usually do. In my other 2 fights, I feel like I did a pretty good job. But 30 seconds to a minute, kind of figure out what I need, and then boom, I explode. In that fight, I was just ready, try to kill him.
Yeah. Did you smell, since you saying that? Did you smell blood in the water? Since you did do that, you were like, okay, well, I think I could like probably just outstrike this guy and just go all the way. Did you get a sense of that, or did you just have a game plan automatic? Let's just go finish this guy right now.
Yeah, I think when before the fight you can talk about what you want to do, but when you step in there, it's like you look at somebody right in front of you, you just want to take their head off. Especially when it's like you're in there to hurt them. You want to try to hurt them as much as you can. You want to try to finish them. Sparring, it's one thing, but when you're in there in the cage, it's like, all right, I need to try to take this guy's head off. But I need to do that differently. Not with every strike that I throw. I don't need to do it. It's still similar to sparring in the sense that, I still need to be feigning. I still need to be touching him a little bit to set up the hard shots. I had the game plan of going in there and trying to, take my time, but sometimes things changes. Someone's right in front of you. Yeah. I feel like I could take this guy's head off and, all right, I'm going to try to send it. But
what's the general, so like, I've never been much of like a competitor as far as like, like I've competed, but not at that high level.
Right.
But what is the difference between, let's say, this is going to be a general question, but a sparring match and how you go prep for that towards your first pro fight? You know what I mean? Like that must have been a big deal, right? Your first pro fight, it's going to be counted on the records.
Right.
And then like, how did you prep for all that? Were you doing a lot of hard sparring? Were you doing just like, were you watching game tape of the other guy? Like what was your process on that?
Yeah, I tried to spar at least pretty hard. Not necessarily like trying to take the guy's head off, but just intense with the partners that I have. With my opponent, he didn't have any tape on him in the last 5 years. So I actually had a 5-year layoff. But a couple of guys that he did fight were really tough. So, it was a 5-year layoff. The guy was still super tough. My opponent.
The guy that you fought.
Yeah. He was still a really tough guy.
Yeah.
I try to, even though I
mean, he went 3 rounds with you just fucking bashing his head off. So
yeah,
like,
exactly. So, I tried to take his head off a couple times. Sometimes I missed, but sometimes also connected.
Yeah.
So you got to chin on him for sure. But I think the big thing was it is harder when you also don't get to see footage. Because I can look at footage from 5 years ago, but it only matters so much.
Yeah.
So it's also, I think if I would have took my time a little bit more, kind of got a feel for kind of how he moves, what he does, it would have been a lot different.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. So did you know that, like, I'm sure that you wanted to, like, get the knockout, get the TKO. When did you know that you weren't going to get it?
There wasn't a point in time where I didn't think I was going to get it.
Okay,
Because it's like I dropped in the first round, then I dropped in the end of the third round too. It was just, the kind of shift in mindset was like, all right, I just need to do what I needed to win,
Right.
Because like in the third round, I took his back. I think I held his back for like 3 minutes. Even though I did win the first 2 rounds, it's just a mindset thing when I'm in there. It's like win every round, win every exchange,
Speaking of which, you talk about mindset. Who's the biggest proponent that's on your side that teaches you about like the mindset aspect of fight? Not really the drilling part, but then like, all right, it's like, all right, Jackson, like, listen, man, you just go in there, be confident, or however they talk you up. Like, who is your biggest influence when it comes down to
I think it's not just one person, but just kind of the circle that I'm in.
Yeah.
Like training with the Tackett brothers, training with Cody, training with Nicky Rod and
Those
Damien.
are some, yeah,
it's a lot of
crazy
really
guys.
good guys, and they are mostly grapplers besides Cody and Damien. But it's like they've competed a bunch of times in jiu-jitsu. Cody and Damien have the MMA fights now. And it's really just learning from them, learn from their experiences. Because I had a lot of Muay Thai fights, but they were fighting MMA before me. And, I used to always go watch Cody fight MMA, be there for him, kind of see how he does everything before he fights, because a lot of times I would go watch Cody when I was like 14, 15, even 16 years old because I couldn't fight MMA in Texas yet. Not with head contact. I didn't want to do MMA without head contact. So I kind of get to see the buildup of everything for him. Same thing with Damien, how they prepare, how they feel, the kind of the nerves, what goes on before. So I got a good idea of everything for that before I even did my first MMA fight.
Right. What do you see? Like, how are you feeling at that time? We talked about a little bit of, before the walkout, your first pro fight, man. Are you getting butterflies in your stomach, man? Or are you just kind of like calm? What's going on, man? Because it is a big spotlight, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been there a lot of times now, even though I've only done 3 MMA fights, the Muay Thai fights, and just being there watching other people, even though, I'm not the one fighting me. If I'm watching Cody or Damien, I'm still there and kind of, all right, thinking in my brain, all right, I'm going to be here in a year, 2 years, whatever it is, that I'm just already starting to prepare myself versus the moment's happening. I'm like, oh, this is catching me off guard. Just starting to just be really aware of, all right, this is going to happen at this time. I need to be ready for this. Or I remember last year, last year's 2024, right? Like in January, I was like, all right, I'm going to fight MMA this year. So I was already preparing myself in January, like, all right, mentally I need to prepare that I'm fighting MMA in September or whenever it's going to be, just so it doesn't come around when I'm about to get a fight and I'm like, oh, now I need to, prepare myself mentally. Even though, I could be ready in a month or 2 months. Better to have that, extra 7 or 8 months behind me already versus just kind of like a quick, like, all right, gotta flip the switch,
Yeah, man. I guess it's just one of those things. You are your environment, right?
Yeah.
And what you talked about, like with the guys that you've been hanging out with, I mean, they're pretty renowned at this point, right? Like that's how, I've known you, and then it's like there's just talk, there's just all this hype with you. You're 17?
17, yes,
17, yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, and then once I was listening to one of the podcasts too. Once you grow into like 21, 20, dude, sky's the limit.
For sure.
And I see, you know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, damn, like I know. Yeah. So talking about that, is there a lot of pressure on that too? Or do you just not think about that? Because of your trajectory and all the high level people that you do train with, there's expectations there, right? Like, I mean, I guess that's why I'm asking you, so to get your point of view of it. What kind of like, is the expectations high for you at this point, or you just don't think about that stuff?
I try to, if someone's like saying a lot of stuff about that kind of stuff. It's, in one ear out the other, because I don't want my head to get too big or too low.
Yeah.
Anytime I'm training, or even when I, if I go and fight and I win, regardless of how I win or how the fight goes, like I'm never gonna get too high on it because there's the next one, or if it doesn't go as well, I'm not gonna get too low because there's the next one. I think what I've learned from some people is that, they win or they have a bad performance. Let's say they win, they get super high, they're so happy about it, then, they don't start to train as hard. And then it's like, they go up here and then are sort of come back down here.
Yeah.
Versus like, or if they lose, let's say they're here, now they go down super bad, with confidence, or they don't feel as good, or, they get discouraged. Now they lose 2 fights in a row. They don't start to do as well. I think a big thing that helped me too with that was competing in ADCC tournaments where, let's say it's double elimination, or I do like 2 brackets. So let's say I win the first one, I lose the second one. All right, I still have 6-7 more matches left. So even if you lose, I can still kind of come back and work my way back up.
Right.
The first couple times I did it, I didn't do super good. Me and my one of my best friends, Davis, he would always kind of travel with me. Davis, he would, since I was like 14 years old, I couldn't drive yet, and my parents were working. He would drive me to class every day, and take care of me, make sure I was training, helping me drilling, whatever. So a couple times we would go to like Florida, we'd go to Jersey, Vegas, and we would go. He would take me to go compete in those tournaments. Even though the first 2 or 3 maybe wasn't great, but that 4th one, I remember one time I went like 7-1, and then I won, one of the opens, and then just got better each time. And then ADCC trials, I made I think top 64, which still, it's not as good as I wanted, but it's a big improvement from the first time where I lost first round,
Right.
Just kind of slowly improving each time. And obviously as I'm getting bigger, it only helps.
Yeah, you got tall as shit from like a year ago.
yeah, I think I grew like 5 inches, maybe a little
great.
less, but.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like even with the ADCC trials, right? I would have figured that, not that there's nothing on the line, but then compared to like, now you're doing this kind of for a living, right? I mean, you're going pro and it's
Exactly.
pretty much your life now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good that you got all those, like competition experience in, like you said, 15, what is it? Over 15 Muay Thai fights and WBC. Like
yeah. 17 Muay Thai fights and 3 MMA.
Damn.
So yeah, my last fight was my 20th like striking fight, or that has striking involved. So that was pretty cool.
So on the other side of that, like you've had all this experience. When was the time that you like was a fight that you were like, oh shit, like I'm in trouble? You know what I mean? Or was it ever like that, or do you just pour it on people?
Probably not yet. There's definitely some good kids that I fought, like doing like the WBC tournament.
Yep.
The kid I fought in the finals, I was like 5'6" at the time. He was like 6'1" or 6 foot tall. Maybe a little bit shorter, but he was like way taller than me, and he had like 50 fights. So he had a lot of fights, and he was like he was like a big favorite to kind of win the division. So before that fight, I didn't really think too much of it, because I'm only gonna get in my head thinking, oh, this guy's so good, whatever. 'Cause I just believe in myself, I believe what I'm on, and I feel confident. I'm standing in front of anybody, like I feel confident. Obviously that's not every day. Some days you spar with people, and you're like, you spar with someone that has no fights, and it'd be really rough. Or you can spar with someone who's super high level, and I'm like, oh, I feel great. No one can touch me right now. And obviously that's what happens with training. You have a lot of good days, a lot of kind of okay days, a lot of bad days. But if you always never get too high, never get too too low, I feel pretty good about, all right, I know I'm gonna get that good day again. I know I'm gonna get, that okay day, that bad day again. But just keep knowing that it's gonna be that good day again.
What's your process on like striking, man? Do you focus on just one thing at a time every training session, or do you just like put it all together? What's your thought process when you're training, particularly in striking?
I think it's the way that how my coach Ellen Willis has us train. Usually we do every day at 10:30. Me, Damien, and Ellen will do like a private session together. So do about an hour and a half every day, and then maybe stuff at night, kind of change it. But we really focus on that hour and a half time. That's the time that I really see the biggest improvement. Is we're really starting to like put everything together, want to work on, and he takes notes for every session. So at the end of every session, we kind of go over what we did good, what we could do better for like what I tell Damien, what Damien tells me, and what Eldon saw as well. So let's say Monday we do this needs to be better, or this was good. Then Tuesday we kind of pick up back up on that, and then maybe the practice is around that. So it's like, let's say my jab wasn't as sharp today. Maybe the next day we're gonna work on my jab, or my cross was really sharp today. It was looking good. Maybe tomorrow we're gonna focus on the cross and stuff we can do off of the cross. Just kind of building those things. But I think that's what really helps. And then, over time, like, when I first started training Muay Thai, I wasn't great. No one's great the first day. Yep. But over time of kind of training like that, kind of putting these things together, now it's all just muscle memory for me. Where, in front of somebody, if one thing's running, I like kind of the whole engine's running. You know,
It's like a flow state, right?
Exactly.
Like you get into like just like not even thinking about it anymore.
that's when I'm at my best. You know, is when I'm
Yeah.
not thinking about it. I think that's John Jones talks about that a lot, kind of like the flow state and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That that stuff matters.
How do you personally get into that? Like you said, is it just like a day-to-day basis of how you feel? You're just on it? Or is there a process to that where you're like, all right, man, I'm just going to be light on my feet? Like, what do you think about when you're, especially when like pre-fight camp or something, when you need to be on? Like, how do you turn it on?
I think for me, it's just like when I'm sparring, I want to be free, I want to be open. Like the more times I think, obviously you got to be thinking a little bit, but can't be hesitating. The more you're thinking, the more you're hesitating, the more you're waiting, the more something could change in an instant. Fighting is very different where I think like most sports, you play football, it's 4 quarters, there's, 15 minutes. You got time, you're on offense, you're on defense. Yeah. Fighting, it constantly switches. There's, you could be winning for, 14 minutes and then in that 15th, right before that 15th minute, you lose. Look at Usman and Leon Edwards. Usman was dominating the fight once the first 4 rounds gets knocked out with a minute left.
Yeah.
And it's like that really sucks. It's like you're winning a whole fight. When does that ever happen in football? If you're up 28 points, they score 1 touchdown. You don't lose. You're up 3 touchdowns.
There's a very it does happen, but not as often.
Exactly.
Right? Like
you could be
like
winning. You maybe choke a lead. That kind of stuff happens too.
Yeah,
but
right.
It just in striking, it just
you
changes,
get countered.
changes.
You get check hooked. Yeah, it's over, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to talk about. So I think I talked to Cody or someone or Vince actually last week. Was there any like kind of trauma in your life that caused you to fighting? Because I think as a fighter, this is kind of like a fun subject to talk about.
Yeah.
Like everyone's nice, right? Everyone's kind at the gym. We're all brothers and stuff like that, brothers and sisters. But then it's kind of like, hold on, man, why are you fighting? You're a little bit off, right?
Yeah,
like it's like some people got bullied, some people didn't have parents, some people were poor.
Right.
Do you think there's something underlying reason that you fight?
I know when I was younger, I've always had kind of anger issues. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, there you go, man. That's what I want to get out.
But I know a couple times when I was younger, there's just one time when I was in New York and I was like 2 years old, and this kid we were hanging out. It was like my friend.
Did you say you were 2 years old?
2 years old.
Christ. All right.
And he kept like turning light switch off. Yeah. I wanted the lights to be on, so I like punched him in the face and like made his nose bloody. At 2 years old,
Yeah.
There's a couple other times when I was like punching people. And I remember when I was younger, I had like a lot of anger issues where I would just kind of flip out like pretty easily. But then I think as time went on, hanging out with like a lot of different people growing up, it does chill out. But there's like certain times, I talk about those 30 good days, 30 medium days, 30 bad days. There's definitely that 30 bad days where, I'm sparring people. If someone lands something, I'm okay with it. And there's some days where someone touching me with a jab, I might get a little crazy.
Right. Hold on. Talk about that principle, man. You said 30 good days, 30 bad days. That's like a framework, man.
I think 30 good days, 30 okay days where maybe let's say I go do a training session. I'm doing some things well, some things, okay. And 30 days where it's like they're rough, they're harder to get through. Stuff isn't clicking as well. Maybe it's not exactly 30, obviously.
Okay.
But I think there's a majority of like you get a percentage where it's like you'll have these good days, these okay days, these bad days.
These bad days, yeah.
And the bad day doesn't mean like, oh, I'm just getting destroyed. It just means that stuff isn't clicking. Maybe I'm not entering the flow state as easy. Maybe I'm
You're
not
brain fogged a little bit.
Yeah, maybe stuff that I usually do well, I'm not doing well.
Right.
know?
Yeah, for sure, man. That's a great point, man. I was like, wait a minute, man. This guy has business frameworks too. Because I think a lot about that, like the 20-80 rule. It's like 30,
exactly.
30. What do you mean? I'm striking?
Yeah, right.
I was like, this guy, man. Yeah, but I think it's very, very interesting because, I think the majority of us, honestly, I think John Woods talked about it to me in sparring too.
Right.
It's like we all have something pretty wrong. If you're willing to go in there and kind of quote unquote hurt another human being and then be hurt as well.
Right.
There has to be like a light switch. I know everyone's kind and stuff over there at the gym and, we know like the certain nuances of like what people could do and all that stuff, what we could do and all that. But I mean, considering like, in some sort of way, a lot of people have messed up childhoods because
for sure. I think that's definitely different. Like, I had a good childhood. I had a great childhood. So I'm happy with, it's not because of that. I think there's something to me that it just, I enjoy kind of.
It may be genetics too.
It could be.
You could have been like, you just had anger issues when you were born. Like there's triggers in that.
I mean, it's a great thing to say, but I sometimes I do get joy out of hurting people. I'm not going to lie. So it's like,
there you go.
But
that's why we're here.
It changes, It's like, I think when I started to get a little bit bigger and, I was small for a long time. I was like, 13, 14 years old at 100 pounds, 110 pounds. And I started to get bigger. And I can actually kind of start beating adults, especially in striking. Jiu-jitsu is a little bit different. Someone will be a lot stronger than you. But in striking, I don't know. I got really good at striking really fast. I felt like so I could starting to go harder and harder. And I could take a shot a little bit better.
Sure.
So then it's like I just want to hurt people, or it's like I'm a petty person sometimes. So people that would beat me before when I was smaller,
Of course,
when I get a little bit older, it's like all right, now I'm gonna give it back. But there's a couple times where I think in the past year was like I start to like be a little bit nicer in some ways. Where if I do hit someone a little too hard, I'm like, all right, my bad.
I think
it comes off a little bit, but there's also like talk about that 30. That 30, those 30 days where I'm a little more angry. Where I gotta try to hurt people a little more, and it's a little messed up. But I've never I've only knocked like one person out, and it was a complete accident. If you ask people about it, he like slipped. I threw a head kick and knocked him out. Sure. It's very rare that I knock someone out in sparring. It's not a daily occurrence. I just go in there and knock someone out.
Yeah, for sure. We'd be a little bit worried if
it was every day. There's something wrong.
Yeah, there's something wrong. Yeah. I'm gonna call you like Sean Strickland number 2 or
exactly.
something. But yeah, man, I think man, that's so freaking interesting because listen, man. It's funny because people aren't bad people for saying that kind of stuff. It's innate in us as human beings, but people don't like to say that because they don't want to come off as a bad person. But let's call it what it is. You're in the fight game.
Yeah,
like like there's testosterones and all these chemicals firing off, and especially if you're in a heated sparring session with someone maybe equal to you that you don't really know.
Yeah.
You know what? That's an interesting subject to go to. Have you ever been in one of those? I'm sure in like a heated kind of like.
For sure.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Can you talk
often.
a little bit about that? Like
yeah,
how
I mean,
you manage that?
I think it happened a little bit more when I was smaller. Just because I might be better than them technically, but they're a little bit bigger than me, so it's like I can't really hurt them yet. Yeah. Or like if I hit them with a clean shot, I still am not gonna like rock them or now. But now that I'm a little bigger, I think if I do hit someone pretty hard that's close in weight, I think I have the chance of hurting someone a little bit more. But definitely with those heating sparring sessions, it kind of just depends who it is. It's just, do I know this person? Do I not know them? If we're friends, it's like, hey, it's just a heated sparring session, or maybe not necessarily even heated. It's just you're going harder, because there's just people that you can go pretty hard with, and there's no hard feelings. It's just you're sparring, or there's just people that you don't know, or you kind of know, but you spar hard, and then you can feel there's a little more tension.
Yeah. So be honest, do you hold grudges when that kind of stuff happens? It's kind of like, because you just said, man, you were like, yeah, I remember. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think when I was younger, I remembered a little bit more because they could beat me because I was like, all right, well, I'm only smaller than them, wait till I'm bigger. But I think now it's like if someone has, a better day against me or, whatever happens, it's like, all right, I'll get it back, but it's not like in my head all the time,
Right. Yeah.
Whereas like, I don't go to bed at night thinking like, oh, I need to get this guy back.
Yeah, for sure.
Most of the time,
It's almost like just when I see you, I see you.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Wait for those 30 good days,
Yeah. So I want to go back to, the people that you train with, because I think it's such an integral part of your like development.
Right.
With Damien, right?
Yeah.
Nicky Rod, Cody, man, you got some crazy, killers over there, man. Right. Can you explain about like how that shaped everything in your environment? Like, what did that do for you? I mean, obviously it turned you to what you are because you are who your environment.
Right.
But training with Cody, I saw that, you guys been training for what, over 6 years or something?
Yeah, basically
like
6 years.
Yeah. So how's that been like, man? And how is it like to train with like high level guys? What are the certain nuances that you get from them compared to like, if you were training somewhere else?
I think it's just being around those guys where I'm kind of always getting a pretty good example. Or if, they've all had a bunch of experiences, so they learn from the good or bad a little bit sooner than I have, just because they've done a little bit more than me, or they've been around a little bit longer. Yeah. So I can also learn from them. Maybe they had mistakes or stuff that went really well for them, so I can kind of, get ideas from them or learn from them. Just do this, do that, and I can trust them because they've been through that. Or it's like if I'm telling somebody who's coming up in Muay Thai or MMA, stuff that I've been through, it's like it's just experiences that we've had. It's just basically facts, it's like if Nicky Rod says this happened or, do this, do that, like I'm going to trust him. Or if, Cody says that, I'm going to trust him because he's been through that. Like he has no reason to lie to me about that, and he's only trying to help me,
Yeah, of course, man. So you and Cody obviously have had Cody on the podcast. What's the biggest thing? And man, I respect the hell out of the guy, man. He's a straight dog. But what's the biggest thing particularly that you've learned from him? And especially at a young age, you said 6 years ago, man, you were like, what, 12?
Yeah, like 11.
Like that,
yeah, 11.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, like I didn't train with him as much just because he wasn't doing striking, and obviously I was 11 years old. It's like you can only get so much out of training with me. But I think over time, I think by the time I was like 14 or 15 years old, we started drilling and training a lot more. Yeah. And
in jiu-jitsu,
just like striking, anything, anything. Like every day we would train, like 2 hours in the morning, and then we train together at night. So like most days we're training together 3 or 4 hours. You know. I think with him it was cool having him there because it was someone that I could always just train with. It's like I text Cody, he texts me. All right, let's train. We're gonna, we're both watching the same stuff. He's watching these videos, I'm watching the same ones. We're getting an idea, or we kind of agree on with a lot of same stuff. Or if he says something he sees, like I trust him. Or if I say something, like he's gonna trust me.
Yeah.
It's not like, obviously, we can still talk about like, oh, I don't think this is great, or he doesn't think it's great. We go back and forth, but we're just kind of having someone there always to drill with me. Like I know after this, we're gonna go drill for an hour and then do a striking class. It's like, anytime I come out here, it's like he's always taking care of me, always helping me out, and he has such a good eye for MMA too. I think he's only really been in the game for 4 years of MMA, but I think he just sees things very, very well.
I mean, the stuff that he's accomplished, right? Like, to be in that big spotlight, and then just his prior fight, which, he got fight of the night as well. So it's like the experience, he's only going to get better from here.
Yeah.
And then the reason why I ask is how training with those guys. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. It's just kind of like they can just teach you some stuff. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like
that's why I love coming here too. It's like today I spar with Merab, Nazim, and Cam, a couple other really guys. It's all, Merab's the UFC champ. He just, it's like a 12 or however long win streak. He's beating all these guys. He's the star right now. He's one of the biggest guys in the UFC. It's
dude.
Like I'm so lucky to be able to train with these guys. I'm very grateful. It's just to be around those guys. I can learn so much from them, and they have those experiences.
What is it about your influences, to get mixed with like the likes of Merab, right? And like Nicky Rod and stuff like that. What do you think it was? Is it because like you were so young that people respected that? Like they knew that you weren't fucking around and you were going to get high level? Was it just the people you knew, or did you happen to just come across a gym?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think it was?
I think between being dedicated and those guys kind of see me, how much I train. I think they're like, if I see someone that's young and doing that kind of stuff, it's kind of like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I think that person, or I want to put more time into that person because they're doing those things, and I train a lot. That's, really all I do. I train, I go to sleep and I eat. That's it. There's not much that I do outside of fighting. But I think,
it's like a respect factor, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
I think that as well. And then between I always come to Seneca. I've only really been coming here for almost 2 years. Even though that's a pretty good amount of time. Like I don't live here.
Yeah.
I only can come out every, month, 2-3 months. But I think between getting to meet like Cody and those guys, then I meet the guys at B Team, and then I meet the guys out here, and slowly start to work my way into everybody.
That's quite a
such
network,
a good
man.
network, exactly.
Yeah, that's quite a network, man. What do you think is like, say if you wanted to get into striking, right? Like say pure Muay Thai or something like that. What's your best advice for people that want to just specialize in striking? Like let's forget about like the grappling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like if you look at your Instagram, you're known for that. How would you take someone, man? Take me through like the process of how you teach them if you were a coach to be a fucking high level striker like you.
If I was going to take someone to be like a competitor, or just
competitor. Yeah.
I think the big thing is, gotta be consistent. The big part.
Yep.
Just make sure you're spending your time doing the right things. Because I do train a lot. Like I train, however many hours a day, but it's working on specific things. We're going to get better. You could spend 6-7 hours just kind of doing whatever. You might not even get better, that much better versus the guy that puts in a lot of work on 2 to 3 hours. He's probably gonna be way better than the guy that does 6 or 7 hours, but it's very focused. It's very like dialed in on what he's doing, So I think, I wouldn't say like, perfect your jab, perfect your cross, whatever. Because you could go on the technical side too, but I think it's more about kind of how of a fighter you want to be, what style. Like I think it also matters your body type. Like for me, when I was younger, I would fight more, close inside fighting, but it's because I was a lot smaller than everybody. Now as I get taller, it's like my style kind of changes because it doesn't make sense for me to fight super close to somebody.
You're more
if I have a crazy long reach or my legs are way longer, I think, body type matters for sure. Kind of what's their attributes. Are they super fast? Yeah. Are they super strong? Are they big? I think that kind of stuff comes into play. When it comes to like concepts and stuff like that, I think defense is super important. Getting someone, in footwork, like defensive footwork, knowing how to move your feet, knowing how to move your body, kind of being aware, being able to react to things, being in the right position. I think the big thing is being in the right position most of the time. If you're in the right position where you're either safe or in a safe position where you can attack, those are big things.
Can you give me a little bit of, for more of the intermediate people, can you give me like a rundown a little bit of like positioning and ranging? Because I think that's where like what separates, right? Like the beginners, and as a beginner, you're learning jabs and stuff like that. And then now it's positioning, it's range, it's timing. Right. Can you give me a rundown on like each positioning, range, and timing? I know we're getting technical, but
for sure, that still matters.
I think people don't understand that at that level. They'll say range, they'll be like, they don't really understand it though,
I think way I look at it is like All right, let's say we're here. I'm out of range. It's where I can't touch your hand. I can't teep you. I can't kick you. It's like where nothing can really happen, right? So that's kind of like just out of range. Long range would be where mostly it's like lead side strikes, where it's maybe I can jab you or I can touch your lead hand. So say we're both orthodox. I can take my left hand and put on your left hand.
You're like probing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you're southpaw, I can take my left hand, put on your right hand, right? I think those are like, that's what I'm starting into this long range, where it's still going to be mostly my lead side. So it'd be like my jab and it could be kicks. So it could be round kicks, it could be teeps. Mid range, I feel like it's pretty much anything where, well, actually, let's go back to long range. Long range is where you're, still far, where it's mostly gonna be your lead hand and, round kicks, teeps, all that kind of stuff, but you're one step away from anything, right? So let's say I'm at long range, I could go from long range to mid to close very easily within one step, So that way, I could be from just, my lead side and kicking to now I'm throwing punches, elbows, knees, all that stuff within one step. So once you have the long range, even though it is a little bit safer, the thing about long range is that I feel like you have more time to react. If I'm at mid range, there's less time for me to react to things and move. If I'm at long range, I'm usually just one step away from either touching you or moving away from you, where you can't hit me. Right? If I'm at a mid range, though, I can take one step away and you could still catch me. You throw a head kick, maybe I make you barely miss, and then boom, toes hit me.
Right.
First, I'm at a long range, I take that step back, I'm safe. Or you throw a cross, and maybe it doesn't hit me, but if you throw an overhand, you're still gonna catch me a little bit. Mid range is more of a 50-50. I try to spend less time in the mid range because if you can hit me with anything, I can hit you with anything.
And the whole point is to get the advantage, right?
Exactly.
Like that,
That's my thing about Tula is I always want to have the advantage. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. Okay, I'm feigning, I'm touching their hand, I'm controlling their hand. I have the advantage. I have, I'm outside. I have outside position. I'm winning. I have the advantage. The more I can kind of enter engagements with an advantage, the better. It's just safer.
So would you say like your biggest attributes is the range? Because both parties, like say if they're open stance, right, they can control the hand. What if they're like the same range as you? How would you dictate that? Say if you're probing and then you're grabbing hands and then you're trying to get like position. How would you go about that? Say if they're like at your level too. Like what's the game over here?
I think so. Say we're open stance. I'll say we start like at a long range or let's say we start out of range, or I can't touch them yet. Just to enter a long range, I would only grab the hand from a long range, just because from mid range, it's like, all right, now I could get kneed, I could get kicked. There's just too much that could happen. I think for me, with the longer reach against most people, I want to play more at a long to almost out of range, right? Just because why should I give them an advantage if I don't have to? I think go back to my last fight. I have a longer range on my opponent. I'm a little bit taller. I shouldn't fight at mid range if I don't have to. Like if we're gonna spar, I'm not gonna spar you at a mid range because it gives you more chances to hit me.
Because I'm shorter.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I'm long, standing at a long range where I'm teeping you, kicking you, maybe jabbing you, feigning a little bit more, like I have the advantage now.
Right.
Like if you're a boxer. And let's say the boxer fight the Muay Thai guy. The Muay Thai guy shouldn't fight the boxer at a mid range.
Right.
Maybe he could clinch him, but we're going to close range now. Mid range is gonna be more for there's hooks, overhands, uppercuts, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
It's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Especially against a good boxer.
Yep.
But if he's long range, teeping him, kicking his legs, kicking him in the body, boxer's not really gonna be able to get in. Or if he does get in, let's say I play at a long range, then if he starts to get too close, then we could clinch.
Right. That they don't have like the habits to kick check. And,
exactly.
That as a boxer, right?
Obviously, very rarely do we ever see like, a pure boxer that only throws punches versus a Muay Thai guy that does punches, kicks, knees, elbows. But if, scenarios like that happen, you see it in MMA where, they're not strictly boxing or strictly Muay Thai, but you have a style, like
yes,
you watch,
they're more bladed maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Like Taporia is heavy on boxing. Like I think they said that he hasn't thrown a kick above the waist ever in the UFC. Maybe not to the head,
Yeah.
But he's super heavy on the boxing style. He has great grappling, but super heavy boxing. Whereas a guy like, let's say Pierre, he's more kickboxing. Or a guy like Izzy, you're gonna see more kickboxing, right? Punches and kicks, a little more feints, throwing teeps, round kicks in there. It's all different styles. Or you get, let's say Taporia and the guy like, Merab, who Merab is, he has, he's very light on his feet, moving around a lot, but he's known for his grappling and takedowns.
Right.
He took down Umar a bunch of times, took down Sean, took down Henry Cejudo. So
for a shorter, so we'll go. You talked about the range over there. For a shorter guy, what's the key aspects? Is it feints? Is it kind of moving your head to get into range? Like when you were, a little bit smaller, like back when you were 13, how would you get in range? And how would you actually, looking back at it, get into range now if you were a smaller fighter?
I think it also depends. Let's say we're in MMA. If you are more of a wrestler, if you're more of a striker, it kind of depends too. Because if you're more of a wrestler, there's things you can do differently. Right? Maybe I'm doing more level changes. I'm throwing big looping shots so I could get inside. If you're more a striker, you probably want to be a little bit better at clinch too, I'd say, or just better inside fighting, or like hooks, uppercuts, knees, elbows, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just because you can fight that mid range too, which it's still, if you're at a mid range, I think it's fine because the reach isn't going to matter as much, and it probably leans closer to the shorter fighter. Like Topuria, how often is Topuria fighting at this long range? Very rarely. He's always stalking his opponent. They start to circle, he's cut him off. He's cut him off constantly, right? Starting to bring the range close where he's strong, where it's uppercuts, overhand hooks. I mean, that's how he knocks out most people. He drops Holloway with a hook. It's like, he wants to fight. He takes the fight where he's best at. That's why I think a lot of these champions, like let's say we look at Pierre, like this long distance where he's kind of close and slowly picking you apart. He's jabbing the head, jabbing the body. He blasts your calf, and then boom, he catches you, right? You look at Dreykus. Yeah, Dreykus, he's not going to play this long kind of, I'm going to go, you're going to go game where he's just kind of always just coming at you. He's leading the dance. I think a big thing too with these guys is the champions, they know how to fight their game. Like Merab knows how to bring people into their game. Like he never let Sean O'Malley get a time to set, pick him apart, try to do all his, really great striking. Merab was just constantly pressuring him, not letting that happen. Something we talk about too, we call this like the barbell, where we always want to be at the end of the barbell, meaning, I'm at the end of this barbell on the side, or the end of this on the side. I'm at this long range, or I'm so close where I'm at close range where I'm grappling. So basically, I'm so far that maybe it's just I'm punching, or I'm touching my lead hand, I can kick, or I'm so close where I kind of shut that down. And that works great for wrestlers. Like Khabib was very good at, he would kind of always be on the outside, maybe level changing. He would throw some crazy strikes and then get in. That's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to, why fight Justin Gaethje or Justin Poirier at a mid range where that's where they're best.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty kind of general, just use whatever you have to your advantage, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You look at Islam, he's southpaw, most of his fights are open stance. He's looking to control center, does a lot of straight attacks, and then when he's ready, he takes the guys down. He very rarely is trying to have those fights where he's fighting in the middle. Poirier was able to stop a couple takedowns, and Poirier had success when he could fight at mid range. But once Islam took that away, he started to dominate the fight.
Right. Exactly. Can you talk about, so that's the physical aspect of the striking game. Can you talk about the mental aspect of the striking game? Are you when you're on defense, are you ready to mentally ready to take those shots? How are you processing that in a competition to where if you get rocked, then it's kind of all right, man, I got to do this thing to recover. What's going through your head when you're fighting a high level competition?
Yeah, I think
mindset wise,
of course you have those days where sparring's light, sparring's hard, you get used to getting hit harder. Someone hits you a little too hard, but you got to get used to that, just that feeling. I think that's the big thing is you never want to get hit in a fight. Obviously you probably can't prepare for Topuaria's power, Pierre's power, but the whole goal is not to get hit by them, right? Obviously easier said than done, but I think mindset wise is just being comfortable. If you get hit, I'm gonna be okay. Never I never want to spar somebody or fight and be I can't get hit, because then once you start to scare something, or, you're feared by something, it's likely going to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm fearing Pierre's hook. Now I'm hesitating. Or even if that doesn't happen, now I'm going to get hit with something else. Because I'm worried so much about this that, everything else is different now.
Yes.
So I kind of just keep it, if someone has a great head kick, I'm going to be aware of it, but I'm not just going to be
the whole time. Because
then it's going to throw your game plan off. You're not going to be able to execute the way you want to. The big thing I noticed, even sparring Merab, it's very hard to do striking with him if you're doing MMA because you're so scared of takedown threat. That's something that takes time to overcome. I don't want to take him down. He's gonna get on top of me, and his takedowns are so good that if he gets it on a leg, he's probably gonna take you down.
Right.
And then if he holds you down, you get back up. It's just so much energy. So then that's why it's hard to deal
we're talking about Merab. You know
exactly. Exactly.
What the fuck?
He's so good.
Yeah. Dude, that's crazy insight, man. I love hearing that because again, it's almost age doesn't almost matter at this point because you have so much experience. Right. I mean, even the way you talk, you're just so self-aware, emotionally and how you deal with your emotions, right? And this is one of a self-improvement podcast, which I think at a very young age is just crazy. Like I said, a lot of people when they're 8 years old, they're eating bugs and you know what I mean? And all
it's
that.
A little different.
Yeah, it's a little different. And man, that's awesome. So for the up and comers, man, that start early at your age, yes, the cliche of training every day and all that stuff.
For sure.
What do you think is the biggest X factor, your trump card to be able to, grow up and be able to manage yourself going into the pros or Amis first and then to a pros?
Something me and some of my friends talk about, because I have a lot of friends. Obviously, I'm only 17, so I have friends that are a little bit younger as well.
Do they fight too? Or?
They do fight.
Okay.
One of my friends, his name is Rumi. He's He won the TBA tournament last year, which is a big Muay Thai tournament. I won it 3 times. He just won it. And he hasn't even been training long. He's only been training maybe 2 or 3 years. I think 3 years this year. He's got very good Muay Thai. He just started like wrestling maybe a year and a half ago, just wrestling for school, and which is great. But he was kind of just doing like, half and half, splitting his time, which is good, right? You're going to get better at MMA over time like that. But what I kind of told him is that if he wants to do MMA, it's better to kind of pursue one and get a little bit better at one first, and then you come back to it. Like, he's already pretty good at Muay Thai. But what's happening in MMA most days now? Wrestling, it's grappling. Look at most champions. They're all very good at grappling. Even though Pierre lost to Magomed, he didn't get taken down. Even though people clown on him for not having, I would just go in there and take him down. It's like he still went 12 for 12 on takedown defense, which is, crazy.
That is crazy.
So what I kind of told him was like, the 80-20 rule, but applied to, striking or fighting. It's just, I want you to commit most of your time to one thing and 20% to the other. So you actually get really good at something. You look at most champions, like they're all really good at something, or they started with a background, or you're seeing it more like wrestlers are starting to kind of transfer over, like, Bo Nickel. He obviously wrestled at Penn State, very, very good wrestler. And he's starting to kind of take off. He's undefeated. Yeah. I don't think that's the only blueprint. It's just to do, one thing for 10, 12 years and then switch over. But I think if you can give a lot of time to one thing, so you actually get really good at something. Because what happens a lot of times when guys just do MMA, it's great, but you're never really going to get good at anything if you just do MMA. You're doing punches, okay, you're doing kicks, now you're doing takedowns. You're slowly going to get good at these, just, I guess, 3 things. If we just look at striking, takedowns, and then jiu-jitsu, it's like, all right, that's 3 things you have to work on. And 3, that's just being general, right? If you like really break down striking and jiu-jitsu and wrestling, there's so much to it, right? Think about just focusing on wrestling, how much is going into wrestling. And think about just one thing, just doing striking, how much goes into striking. Just movement alone, right? There's so much you could talk about on just movement. So what I told him is just, he should just commit a little bit more to one thing. He already has really good striking, so maybe build off of that. Then if you want to fight MMA, you have to have a good takedown defense. Especially MMA now, it's like, it's going to be more common for wrestlers to switch over, or for people to have more of a wrestling, grappling background. Sure. If you don't have good wrestling, you could have the best striking in the world, but if you don't have good wrestling, you're gonna lose. It's just simple. Control. It's simple. Yeah. It's so hard to stop the takedown.
That's so interesting, right? Like the jack of all trades kind of thing, because that's pretty much what you're saying. So back then, I've talked to some old heads, and they always say, like, a lot of them always say, like, especially, actually, I think I had a conversation with my man, Johnny Parsons, who's a welterweight in the UFC. Nice. Yeah, and he was saying that he prefers someone to go, like what you said, into a specialization, kind of like a striking, like he's a badass Muay Thai striker, you know what I mean? Yeah. And he's trained in Thailand and stuff like that, because of that very reason. But nowadays, it's almost like MMA, it's its own discipline, right? Yeah. Like everything, you mix everything together. But you're right. How far can development go when you're training grappling, striking, wall work, and all that stuff? Like, I completely agree with that.
Right. I think it's okay for now, just because of the way kind of MMA is. That's how it came up, I think. Most guys, but they just do MMA. You learn how to do it all together, and it's fine for now. But like 5 years from now, who knows? I think there should be a lot more specialists where they're still gonna be really good at those things that they're not the best at, but they're gonna be so good at striking, and they can still stop your takedowns. They might not shoot on you, they might not have a great single or a great double, but they can still stop what you're maybe really good at. And that's what's gonna be scary. Obviously, there's still champions who just came up doing MMA, but who knows what's gonna be 5 years from now.
Dude, we're seeing it now, though, right? Like, even when we say, like, you have to have some wrestling, or is it just like wrestling takedowns? Because look at Pereira, even Izzy and stuff like that. It's hard to take those fuckers down. Like, it's just like, and it's not like they're wrestling on the ground, and like the majority of the time. Exactly. It's just they're stopping the takedowns, and then you're back on your feet, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, Izzy. I mean, I think Izzy has a great takedown defense. Looking at a lot of his fights, it's like he doesn't really get taken down. One fight he got taken down more was when he went up weight class to fight Jan, which is like, dude, he went up 20 pounds, and Jan is huge. I don't know what Izzy walks around at, but I'm guessing he doesn't walk around close to what Jan walks around at, right? And a lot of his fights, he would stop takedowns and then piece people up. He has great striking. And also, it's very tiring for, let's say you're fighting that really good striker, and a lot of those guys know in their head, all right, the only way I can beat this guy is taking him down. When that doesn't happen, it's like very demotivating. The striker gains confidence. It only gets worse. And if you fail a takedown, especially if you give a lot of energy, it's so tiring.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, man. And that's the same with like Pereira, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like, dude, like it's not like they're wrestling, scrambling on the ground. He's just like, he won't get taken down.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I don't know how many times Pierre's been taken down in the UFC, but a lot of times he would just kind of catch people and then be it. But it's like, dude. And it shows that over time, like if you really give to it, like obviously Pierre has been grappling his whole life. You know, he just started. Yeah, I don't know, maybe been a little over 3, maybe 4 years he's been in the UFC, and he like got really good at takedown defense. You know, and you know, he has a title fight where a guy shoots 12 times and he stops all 12. Like that's impressive. You know, maybe Magomed isn't the wrestler that he could fight. Like you know the kind of quality or how elite of a wrestler he is, but still impressive regardless.
Right, exactly. You know, with that last Pereira fight, do you think that he was, let's say, hesitant of the takedowns? Is that why mostly that he lost on, you know, with the guy he just fought?
Magomed, yeah. I think people talk about the takedown threat, but at the end of the day, usually even he stopped 12 of them, which obviously, you know, Magomed shot a lot, he kind of held him on the cage. But I think too, the way that Magomed moves is kind of gave him problems.
I see.
You know, it's open stance. Even though Pierre, he fought, I think, 2 guys that were southpaws. He fought Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. You know, Khalil trains at Syndicate, which, yeah, they are southpaws. But it's also a type of movement where maybe Jamal and Khalil are a little more kind of trying to walk him down, that kind of style. Versus like Magomed, it's just kind of in and out. It's a little more awkward, which maybe he's not used to the same way.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of guys that maybe Pierre's fought in the UFC, they're a little more flat-footed, especially at that weight. Or not even flat-footed, it's just a slower pace, a slower way they move. When Magomed is constantly moving, you know, it's just different. I think in that time, maybe Pierre was expecting he was going to catch him a little bit sooner. Who knows?
Right.
But the takedown threat, I think, is one of the biggest things where if a striker is very good, they have, you know, crazy power and you have good takedown threat, or the takedown threat is there, that's how you can really shut down a striker. You know, especially if someone has a huge striking advantage. I wouldn't even say Pierre maybe has a huge striking advantage against Magomed, because if he did, I would have done more. But with the threat of the takedown, it made it a little bit more even. You know? Or maybe even Magomed had the advantage because, all right, Pierre's just waiting for a takedown to happen, waiting for something. He's waiting. Versus a lot of times in Pierre fights, it's like he's pressing forward, he's trying to make something happen, or maybe he does counter a little bit, but it's like he's leading the dance. You know, he can't let Magomed lead the dance.
Yeah, he was leading that. You're right about that.
So
yeah, for sure.
I think that's maybe why he had a little bit, you know, struggled a little bit more than usual. Because even like when Khalil fought him, like Khalil did super good the first 2 rounds. Like Khalil beat him in the first 2 rounds. You know, he dropped him once or twice. He was all over him, and then you know, eventually Pierre kind of caught up, but it was just Magomed never really gave him that time to kind of get started. You know, that's the hard part too. If you never really have time to get started, like Pierre never really had any crazy moments. Like, it didn't rock Magomed, he didn't catch him with anything crazy. I mean, most of his shots were calf kicks and leg kicks.
Yeah, and I guess you're talking about like more of that Merab style, right? Where you're not letting him get adjusted and get into like a rhythm or flow.
Yeah, well, they were open stance, right? And it's like Magomed, he's just playing at such a long range where he's fighting hands a lot of times. He's you know, throwing a jab, he's throwing a hook.
Yeah, he was grabbing the head.
And then he shoots, and then now they're just holding the cage. He's holding against the cage for minute and a half.
Yeah.
All right, now they break. Same thing. All right, calf kick. Maybe he catches him in one shot, and then he wins the round like that.
Sure.
Versus like Pierre having this time where he can start to like walk him down, and he never really backed up Magomed.
So, dude, when's your next fight, man?
Hopefully June. That's the plan, is June. Hopefully.
Perfect, man.
Yeah, in Fury, hopefully June. But we'll see. Yeah, see what things happen.
What's the goal, man? Where do we go from here? I know it's like a rocket ship, man. It's sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think I'm not not trying to rush anything. Just kind of take my time.
Yeah.
You know, there's not like a rush for me. You know, of course, being 17, it'd be cool to get in the UFC as soon as possible. But I know how I kind of want to take my time and just slowly. And I'll know when I'm really ready and I feel comfortable. You know, I think the biggest thing for me is just feeling comfortable. But you know, goals obviously. You know, everyone wants to be UFC champion, but I want to be like, you know, one of the best ever. You know, that's the goal. Because it's cool being a champ, but sometimes you could be a champ, but you're not really remembered. And I want to be remembered, and people, you know, see me differently than anyone else.
Yeah, you want that longevity, you want that development. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean you're 17, right? Like, you know, it's the pace that you're going. It's like it's almost like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, for the meantime, and then you could make some adjustments along the way. But dude, you seem to be one of those just outliers, you know, like if anytime you're in the UFC, like I was telling Cody, it's like you're in the top 1%.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's trying to make it to the big show, like the NBA.
Yeah.
But how many people really get there? You know, and it's almost like you're like a big prospect, like, you know, something like freaking Kyrie Irving. You know what I mean? Straight out of college, like you got scouts looking at you. Right. So that's like kind of where we're at. But man, hey man, Jackson, I appreciate you for coming. Thank you for your time. And this is like nuggets of information.
Yeah,
you're
this is
helping
great.
out a lot of people.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you, brother. Good stuff.
Yeah, let's go.